Tracking the tropics as Jerry forms and a East Coast storm system likely this weekend, and then wrapping things up with the potential for maybe some trouble in the Caribbean by the middle of the month. Welcome in, folks. Happy Wednesday, October 8th. And a lot going on out there. A lot of hypotheticals on the map as well. We've got Jerry we're tracking now. We've got what I think is, becoming a high confidence system. It's going to ride up the East Coast and likely bring some pretty big impacts for some of us. And then the hypothetical, maybe potential Caribbean Gulf system by the middle of the month. That one would be named Karen. I know, as funny as that is, that would be quite fitting for that one to form in the place that it's most likely to get the strongest. So we'll see what happens, but we'll be tracking all of it for you in today's video. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name's Gerald. I'm a meteorologist at WCCB Charlotte. If you haven't already, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell for the latest notifications so you're up to date with all the new model data, my analysis, and breakdown of that data, and to keep you weather informed here all year long. Alrighty, folks, with that said, let's just dive right on into things and get started. Now, we'll take a look at the loop of our latest American model run, and you can see showing some trouble. We've got Jerry developing, likely becoming a hurricane, and then a system pulling up the East Coast and bringing impacts, and then a lot of noise down in the Caribbean and Gulf as well, with plenty of rain and some low pressure trying to form. Will it? That's another question that we'll have to try to answer, but you can definitely get a pretty good idea of all the things we're tracking there from that quick loop of the latest American model run. Let me show you a real life analysis though, because it's great what the models say. What does it look like out there right now though is obviously another question. And you can see a couple of these areas that we're tracking. This is Jerry down here at the bottom right of your screen, and we'll get into that one more in depth here in a second. Other than that, we've got another area we're watching into the Gulf down here near the Bay of Campeche, trying to spin up something. Will it? We'll see. Very low in chances it's about to run into Mexico, so likely going to struggle to get a full name here out of that one. And then we've got another area of some disorganized showers and storms along a stalled out kind of coastal boundary out here into the Atlantic, which will be important actually for our East Coast storm, as some energy is going to dive down, pick up some of that tropical moisture, and ride it up the eastern seaboard. So you can definitely see all of the pieces on the table here right now, all those areas that we're watching, although I would say this area in the Gulf is not really what I'm watching for potential development by the middle of the month, as mentioned before. You'll see what I'm talking about later on in the video with that. So you put all this together, what do we get from the National Hurricane Center? Well, I'll just very quickly show you this tiny little blob out here. You can even see some of the rain from it here, getting into the northern Gulf Coast line here of the country of Mexico. And then, again, only a 10% chance that the actual area of circulation will develop and move into Mexico there. The bigger story, obviously, Jerry jumping out at us. We've got a tropical storm right now at about 55 mile an hour winds. And you can see the track here estimated to keep on pulling and going to get oh so close to the islands here, not far at all from Antigua and Barbuda, and not far from the St. Kitts and Nevis and all the other islands out here. You can see a close pass, likely close enough to at least bring some impacts by that point as a hurricane, and then potentially becoming, or at least maintaining that hurricane status, could become an even stronger than a Category 1, would not surprise me, as it pulls up into the North Atlantic and likely missing Bermuda. So it's really that close past the islands that we need to keep a close eye on here with what is now Jerry. Speaking of Jerry, let's zoom on into the storm, analyze its structure a little bit, and kind of try to figure out how well it's doing. I'm going to start with the visible satellite imagery today, and I think it's going to be pretty apparent quickly as to why that is. Jerry dealing with some wind shear this morning, to put it lightly. You can see it's definitely a tropical storm still. It's spinning, and you've got this deep area of convection. However, if you watch the loop a little bit, and I'll pause it, but just watch it one more time here. What do you notice? Well, I'll tell you what I notice. I see Jerry, and you never want to see the center of a tropical system. Anytime that it's kind of naked here in the low levels, that means it's kind of struggling. And again, you can see that's the actual center here, but all of the deep convection is displaced here towards the south east of the storm. So why is that happening? Or do we have dry air nearby? Well, if we look at the dry air map, there's definitely some dry air kind of entraining itself into the system, helping us out a good bit this morning. But what's kind of helping to entrain that dry air into the system is we've got some pretty good wind shear, and the vectors of that wind shear right now are basically blowing, again, all that convection off to the south and to the east of the storm system. So fighting for its life a little bit this morning. I think it'll definitely maintain tropical storm status. I don't think it'll weaken any, but any rapid intensification going to be put on hold here for a while until it can get this part of its life figured out. I'll mention, though, with the dry air, you notice it's all this dry air behind it that's trying to catch up. Eventually, it's going to outrun that. I think once it gets closer to the islands out here, it's going to find an area of more favorable humidity values and probably at least slightly less wind shear, or maybe not as bad as it is right now of wind shear. Obviously, we'll see how it changes over time. But either way, still easily a tropical system right now. We had some microwave imagery passes over it, actually, so that's kind of useful. Let's zoom in and look at that. We don't get to see this very often, but sometimes we get that data. And yeah, you can see the deepest convection all to the south and east here. Those brighter colors are indicating not a well-defined core on this one. So again, that's going to really limit any chance of quick intensification. Sea surface temperatures, though, are not going to be a problem. It's running into some pretty good waters here. I'll put the forecast track on as well. You can see already in about 28 to 29 degrees Celsius waters. That's more than enough to support a hurricane. It's going to maintain that for a big section of its life here, basically all the way up until it gets to about the latitudes of Bermuda. In terms of ocean heat content, it's also going to run into very deep warm water. So that's why the National Hurricane Center is assuming this one is going to have a pretty good chance to intensify. It's going to have a lot of fuel to work with, even more so than it's had at any point in its life so far. Again, right around, we'll call it Friday-ish as it gets near the islands. Looking like a lot of that. Now, wind shear will be the biggest question. Can it survive the wind shear? And I agree with the National Hurricane Center. I think enough to at least find Category 1 status. And there's a world that this could rapidly intensify to something more. But more importantly, what we need to track is the track of the storm. So let's go ahead and take a look at how close this is going to get to the islands and what impacts that means for folks out there. All right, let's go into some forecast model data here. We'll start with the American model, and you can see initializing actually pretty well with, I think, what Jerry looks like. You can even see the displacement of some of that convection from the center of the storm on the latest GFS. So actually, for once in its life, initializing pretty well. What does it show happening? Well, yeah, kind of maintaining intensity for the next 12 to 24 hours or so, and then passes north of the island a bit stronger than it is now, and then really gets to kind of a more favorable environment where wind shear will calm down. You've got that deep ocean heat content and wind shear, like I said, settling down. Again, though, the good news, north of the islands by the time it starts to do that, and then pulls up and out to sea and isn't that big of a deal, but it would bring some rain there to the northern Antilles. What about the European? What does it show? Well, same general idea here, keeps the storm pretty steady in intensity, gets it awfully close to the islands. This would be overnight Thursday into Friday, and then starts to pull north and strengthening from there, and not really being much of a problem for anybody, but could hit, Category 2 storm even out there into the open waters of the Atlantic, which obviously would contribute to this year's ACE number, just meaning accumulated cyclone energy, which will actually be pretty high, I think, this season, because we've had some pretty strong hurricanes out there. We just have been lucky that none of them have, or at least most of them haven't hit anything directly. All right, so looking at the track a little more in depth here, this is the European ensembles, and you can see the mean or the average of everything is in this black line, and you can see it stays offshore with the mean. However, you do have a little cluster here of, I'd say, maybe 20% or so, maybe even 30, that do get close enough, if not a direct landfall on the northern islands here. I don't think this is going to get as far west as Puerto Rico, but this one could clip the islands here as maybe even as strong as a Category 1 storm. That's a more unlikely scenario than for it to stay out to sea right now, but still close enough for comfort, too close for comfort, I should say. All right, the GFS ensembles, all of them are offshore, but still, you got a couple numbers that are a little closer than you like. So you put all this together, what does that mean for the forecast here? Well, I think this is pretty good from the National Hurricane Center. Biggest threat would be rainfall. We could see some training showers and storms out here from Barbuda, Antigua, Anguilla, St. Martin, the St. Kitts and Nevis Islands. Could see, 2 to 4 inches or 50 to 100 millimeters of rainfall out of this one, and I would not be surprised for that to go up a little bit. Again, we got to watch this yellow area. Does that yellow area shift off to the south and to the west at all? If it does, then we could see higher in rain. Also, maybe a little bit of stronger winds out of the south here, so we could see some coastal flooding, maybe a little bit of surge. Would not be a lot, but worth mentioning for our folks out in this part of the world. All right, that's Jerry. Let's talk about the Caribbean system really quickly, or what could become a Caribbean system that I've been talking about for the past couple of days. And then we'll end things out by breaking down this big coastal storm that's going to ride up the East Coast. Here's the first number one thing that jumps out to me when anyone asks my opinion on the potential for something to develop into the Caribbean. It's this one. It's the ocean heat content. I mean, we've just got incredibly deep, warm waters out into this part of the world. Right there into the heart of the Western Caribbean. So if anything can get going, folks, the sky's the limit, unfortunately. And now the question is, again, does anything even try to get going in here? You know, it might not, but the sky is the limit for anything. If it were to develop out here, and if it were to pull north into the Gulf, our Gulf Stream, and our, we have a very warm core eddy out here as well. A lot of ingredients that would support a tropical system. And obviously the warm water's deep, and it's plenty warm enough at the surface as well. I mean, 30, 31 degrees Celsius. That's near 90 degrees Fahrenheit, upper 80s at least. More than enough explosive levels of energy out here should something form. And the question becomes, does it form? Well, I'll tell you this already. October, the most common place for formation this time of the year is into the Caribbean and Gulf. Again, the MDR starts shutting down after Jerry. I think we're done looking out at the main development region of the Atlantic until probably 2026, which is crazy to think next year's 2026. But we do need to focus closer to home this time of year as we start getting some of these frontal systems to come down. They sometimes leave energy out here. We get the Central American gyre to get going. Again, whenever you have different wind directions out here in Central America, and vorticity can get going that way as well. So need to watch that. And then you add this on top of it, the MJO, by the time we get to really starting now through about the 16th to 20th of October, we're going to have a lot of green on the map here into this part of the world. And this is just rising motion that's going to only fuel higher in probabilities of some sort of storm system trying to get going. You put that on top of climatology, on top of very warm sea surface temperatures. The only thing that's left is we need some area of spin to find its way here. And then also, would wind shear and dry air be a problem? Right now, there's not been a lot of dry air into the Caribbean or Gulf as well. So that itself could also be favorable. Here's the good news. The ensembles right now not showing a lot, and that's obviously good news. Here's the European ensembles. Still notice, though, a couple of members around day 8 through 10 try to get going down into this part of the world, but nothing jumping out as a very clear signal for any development here, which is good news, obviously. What about the GFS? Same thing, a couple members, but it's more in that 10 to 20% range for something to develop. But the key, though, like I said, is if something does, the sky is the limit, as I mentioned earlier. And I didn't pull this up, but I'll pull it up here on the fly. Let's see what some of the AI models show. It might show nothing. I don't know. Not much showing up here on the AI models, although the AI data does go further out. So let's bring this to 312 hours. And again, not a lot. A couple members, a couple little squigglies here. Nothing that would make you freak out, but nonetheless, something to be very cautious of. And then I think by the time we get past the 20th or so of October, we can stop talking about this and move on to other greater things. And by the way, this is not the hype train. I'm not here to tell you, oh, we're going to get a major hurricane out here. I'm just telling you the ingredients I showed you suggest if something finds its way here, we need to keep a close eye on it. Luckily, right now, most of the data says nothing will find its way here, but we know more than anybody that data can change. So it's good to just look at all the background features in general. All right, that's the Caribbean and Gulf. Let's hope that doesn't become a problem. And right now, looks okay, but the ingredients are there if something wants to take advantage of it. Well, let's talk about what will be a problem, and that's this big coastal storm riding up the coast where we could see some pretty big impacts. Well, confidence is sky high. We're going to get a storm. You can see it on the European ensembles. This is let me back it up a little bit even. We'll start right around here. This is Friday afternoon and evening. Notice all these little numbers down here towards the Florida Keys, South Florida into the Bahamas. That's the coastal storm getting going. And by the time we go into the weekend and into your Saturday, you'll notice it only strengthens from there. Here's a signal by Saturday afternoon. Strengthening storm riding right up the Carolina coastline. And then the change in the models that we've seen is that this one rides right up through the Outer Banks and then gets all the way to the northeast. Started that way a couple days ago, then it shifted back south, now back up to this thing getting all the way up towards New England here by the time we get into early next week. And I'll show you why that is and why this could be a problem all the way up the eastern seaboard from South Carolina into New England. Comes down to the upper level map. So we've got this little piece of vorticity, and we've got a front working through today. You'll see some showers and storms into the mid-Atlantic, into the northeast, and even into portions of the southeast. A little lobe of vorticity gets left behind here and kind of meanders around and finds its way all the way down to the Gulf Stream, where that system will then feel the upper level lift from this. Sorry, I'll pause it right here. This is Friday evening. Like I said, this is when the storm starts to get going. We've got a lot of diffluence here over a stalled out frontal boundary, over very warm waters. It's a baroclinic nightmare, if you will, just meaning a ton of instability due to temperature changes combined with this upper level lift. And then it gets going. Already a strong trough over the Carolinas. I mean, again, you've got a very well-defined trough here, a lot of lift right over where this surface system will be, meaning this thing is tilted with height, which is always something that helps these storms strengthen. And if that wasn't enough, another piece of energy comes down out of the northeast, scoops that one up, and gives it another shot of reinforcing upper-level juice, if you will, to keep on strengthening. And then finally kind of spins itself out here and stacks itself probably by Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. And then, you can see all other sorts of crazy madness going on here in the long range on the European. But that's the setup. So what does this mean at the surface? Well, let's show it to you. Here's the European run. And you'll watch pretty well. This is going to match the upper level map quite well. Let's see, we'll start Friday, pretty rainy over Florida. Then we get to Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. Here's your coastal storm, about 1,000 millibars, not overly strong, but just lashing the Outer Banks with heavy rain, gusty winds, guaranteed overwash, guaranteed coastal flooding. I can almost guarantee we're going to probably lose another house with a setup like this. And then rides up the coast, keeps strengthening, again, just lashing the Outer Banks overnight Saturday. Tropical storm force conditions, moves up and tries to get into the northeast, starts lashing the Delmarva, the Chesapeake here by Sunday, and then lashes the Jersey Shore, Long Island with gusty winds, heavy rain, some coastal flooding by Monday. And then by Tuesday, it kind of starts to spin itself out a little bit, but not without still bringing impacts. Then your question becomes, well, is that just the European doing European things, or does other model data agree? Here's the GFS. What does it show? Very similar thing. By Saturday, gets into the Outer Banks, hits them hard. By Sunday, gets into the Chesapeake and the Delmarva, even a bigger storm for the Northeast on the GFS run. I mean, 991, folks, that's a strong tropical storm, but in the form of a nor'easter. So expect, wintertime nor'easter impacts in terms of wind and coastal flooding and such, but instead of snow, it's going to be rain, which I-95, you're used to that at this point anyway, right? You hardly see snow anymore, it feels like. But I mean, let me pause it here, folks. If we get a map like this on Sunday night, 989 low right off the Jersey Shore, that's big problems. That's pretty major coastal flooding. That's gusty winds. You're going to get power outages. You're going to get trees down. That's an ugly look on the GFS model. Keeps on working inland, Long Island, New York City. Yeah, your first big storm in a while, maybe by Monday, and then keeps on riding up the coast a little bit. But there is uncertainty still in the forecast, so let me show you that and then those impacts before we round things out. Let me start with the uncertainty before we get to all the impacts. Here's the thing. How close does the storm get to shore? Right now, you can see a lot of model data here gets this thing right up against the Outer Banks. So I think Outer Banks are still ground zero for impacts. That would be the second half of Saturday into the first half of Sunday, maybe longer than that even, but that's your core time frame. And then how close does it get to the Northeast? You got a lot of members that slam this right into the Jersey Shore or into Long Island almost some of these are a borderline hurricane in terms of strength. And then others are further offshore. So which one of these scenarios happens is still the number one question. Obviously, the closer it is to the shore, the worse the impacts are going to be up through the I-95. The further offshore it is, the less the impacts will be. Let me show you some potential wind gusts, though. This is from the European run. Remember, it's the same model I just showed you with the rain, but what does the winds show? Shows tropical storm conditions easily into the Outer Banks. We're talking 50, 60, sometimes 70-mile-an-hour wind gusts, sustain probably more in that 40 to 50 range. Could sustain up near 60, would not surprise me. Here for your overnight Saturday into Sunday. Keep it going, and then watch this thing pull up the coastline. Let's get this up into New England and into the Northeast. Right here, we'll start here, I should say, Sunday afternoon. I mean, check out Southern Maryland here, gusting up near 50 at times. The Jersey Shore getting gusts up into the 40s. Keep it going here. Pause it again. Right offshore, you've got 60 to 70 mile an hour wind gusts just throwing water up against the shore. So coastal flooding, yeah, don't assume that won't be a problem. That and beach erosion will be a concern here from the Outer Banks northbound. And then keeps going. Yeah, New York City, you ready for some gusty winds? If we get that closer track, Again, not a guarantee, but if we get that closer track, easy tropical storm force wind gusts there through Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, all the boroughs probably going to get it pretty good with a look like that, especially out towards Montauk and throughout Long Island. I mean, that's a nasty look here on the model. Keep it going, and even Boston could get some gusty winds before this thing again starts to spin itself out by early next week. Now, all that's, I won't say worst case scenario, but we'll call that about a 30% chance of likelihood, and then a 60% chance we see, or how about this, a 50% chance we see lesser impacts than this, and then maybe that small 10% that it's even worse than what the model shows. But either way, we'll also need to worry about rain. This is just a blend of everything thrown together. What does it show? Well, it shows pretty heavy rainfall into the Outer Banks. We're talking nearly half a foot out towards Kill Devil Hills. Would not surprise me. Again, I keep saying it. I'll say it again. It depends on the exact track, though. This shifts any further inland. We're talking 8 to 12 inches of rain further out, and you could see a sharp cutoff from, maybe only an inch or two to nothing. So, that's just the name of the game. It's just like a snowstorm, but it's rain instead of snow. And then even showing heavy rain all the way up into Long Island, the Jersey Shore, maybe 3 to 4 inches, the Delmarva 3 to 4 inches. And then, you go as far inland as Charlotte, almost nothing out of this besides some rain today. So that's kind of the look here on the models with this system. And then this is from the actual people making the forecast, I should say, this map. All right, that's all I got for you, folks. Boy, oh boy, a lot going on. We've got Jerry, we've got big old nor'easter coming. Just a lot to talk about. I should have a video tomorrow morning. I'm gonna try to force myself to, but like I said, I am going home for a couple days. I know the timing sucks given the weather, but hopefully I'll only miss a Friday video. I'll get a Thursday morning one out. I'll be back by Saturday to give you a YouTube video, and then obviously I'll be on WCCB Charlotte as well, giving you the forecast there. All right, y'all have a great one. Stay safe, stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe, getting close to 50K, and have a great rest of your day.